I'd like to, invite, or before that, actually introduce someone who's actually also helped significantly shape my thinking about learning. I was not a very good student in the traditional kind of sort of way. I struggled through school, and just about made it into college. I was sort of half mind to sort of drop out at some point as well. But someone who kept me going just by infusing small doses of creativity during the summer or during various different points through my growing up. And before that, before actually the school, this was before the school started. This was when this person was designing restaurants and designing water parks around Ahmedabad, before the school started. So I'd like to invite Kiran Bir Sethi on stage, who's the founder of Riverside School, but also a very dear aunt of mine, to really have a conversation about education. Thank you for coming and really being able to have this conversation. It probably is not the drawing room where I can come and say, these are my problems that I am facing, and help me solve them. But maybe we can talk a little more about your story as well. I think having seen you go through these different phases of your own path, from being a designer from NID and doing all these different things, how did you really decide to do education?
I never decided to do education. I mean, I didn't set out to change the world. There was no grand plan. And I think I keep saying that I'm an accidental educationist simply because I woke up to the idea of education only when I became a mother. And my whole life changed. And so I remember still when, as a mother, when you look for schools, you typically go by the word of mouth. And I'm talking about, my son now is 27, so when he was around 21 years ago. Around 21 years ago, you kind of listen to each other. You think that, oh, my husband went to a school, he turned out fine, so let's just put him into the same school. And our pal was in that same school. So without thinking too much, I remember I put Rag into what was considered, I presume it's still considered a premier school in Ahmedabad, right? And I didn't even factor in the fact that there were 60 children in a class. You don't really think about these. And now I think parents are a lot more savvy, but at that time, you just go. And that emotional investment isn't as important. Bus, he went to school. I had ridiculous experiences. And I remember the two that really kind of got me to take the call of taking him out of school. But I still remember the idea of compliance. And I was listening to Vibha and Kajal speak about choice and getting children involved in conversations. That just doesn't exist in most schools. These are rare conversations. So I remember my son once came back from school, and he had a big red mark across his notebook. The teacher's red pen. Oh, that's a dreaded weapon right there. And he had written an essay on the cow. And not even being creative. All he did was copy the point number 2 after point number 3 or some ridiculous thing like that. And the teacher just put this mark. And I remember my response to my son, and I asked him, Beta, what happened? And he said, Mama, I don't know. And this is what parents do, and we don't even realize that. We get angry at our children. We start realizing, you must not have paid attention, because the frustration of a system we get out at the most vulnerable. And I remember that I kind of, just going back in a little bit of fear to say, oh, this is going to be the story. And unbeknownst to our children, very early on, they start choreographing their way through life. How to stay out of trouble, how to ensure that a teacher will like them, how to, be quiet and in the distance. And the second time, actually, when I went to when that was the moment I took my son out, we were in one line waiting for a report card, first term, midterm, some ridiculous, again, 6-year-olds. And I was third in line, and my son was holding my hand. And there were these 2 other parents in front, and they were holding, their children were there. And the first one took her paper from this really bored teacher, and the second mother peeped over the shoulder to look at what marks this first child must have got. So when she went up, she got the report card, and I don't know what it was, but she turned around and gave her child a big whack right there. And I remember my son's hand in my hand. I could hear him gasp, and he shook. And that's it. I said, this can't work. And that day I called up Geet, and I said, Geetu, I'm taking Rag out of school. So that's it. And I said, I can do a better job. This just can't be the narrative. And that's it. And I started Riverside School in my home with 25 children. I mean, that's another story, but that's really how it was. It was a response to say, you are who you've been waiting for. I keep saying that. That's at the heart of the I can mindset. Yeah, nobody's going to come and save your life. And you don't need permission to make life better. And that's really what I learned. And I think the design thinking really puts that confidence back, that you are who you've been waiting for. And I think that confidence to say, I was not setting out to change education, it was my son's life. And if it's personal, and if it's a story that wakes you up every single day, you're going to have the stamina for the long haul. So I think I found that purpose in my son's story, and eventually it became many children's story, but it started just with that fundamental belief that I can do a better job, and I don't need permission from anybody. So that's Riverside 17 years ago.
Amazing. So, I mean, of course, this stage where you were just about getting kids home and starting school, and I remember it was a half-finished house, and it was still about you were just about convincing people to enroll, and then starting from just thinking about the curriculum. What was and this idea that Punya spoke about yesterday about educators being designers and thinking like designers, and how did that process start of making these teachers and educators that you were starting off with as thinking like designers and becoming designers?
Unlike the focus of education that has always been what to teach and how to teach it, design starts with who to reach and why is it important. And that is the fundamental difference. Otherwise, what happens is so much of education, the child is incidental. I mean, we design for them, we tell them what is right for them. So the whole thing becomes designing for somebody rather than with somebody. And I think the greatest lesson I learned was exactly that. I remember I was teaching the grade 1 students, and I had this little lovely child called Hardik Baksani in my class. And Hardik Baksani, he came to grade 1, so he'd already been to junior and senior in some other school, and he had some like 85% in English as one report card for some strange reason. And my Hardik Baksani came to school, and the only thing that he kept looking was, he just kept looking at me saying, do you notice me? And I think that for the longest time I kept thinking, how will Hardik teach me how to teach him? And I remember we had these massive blue files. Before we opened doors, we had this fancy planning. Okay, a lot of schools have log books. Planning is done, okay, already done. It doesn't really matter whether the child can learn from it. So that file that I had, in my arrogance, thinking that, I know what to teach the Hardik Baksanis of the world, and I know what to teach a grade 1 because it's written there. There's a textbook, and it's all very laid out. They have to learn it because it's there. That was a big wake-up call for me. I remember I had Hardik on one side, and I had Jazz on the other side, and Jazz had already kind of had clarity, so she had to go on, and my Hardik had to be reached out to. So those files went out of the window. And I think those first 7 years, and it took me 7 years teaching full-time to really be shaped by what they were telling me to teach. So I will tell you just the one thing. When we talk about empathy and design thinking, the who will shape the what and the how. It's not, let's be more creative, how can technology work, what to teach and be more creative. It is who. Who is a child? What does it mean to love our children? How long is childhood? I think these are the questions that shaped a lot of the process that went on. And that, not teaching, but reaching children, empowered us with more confidence. The moment you're listening to a child, and the act of listening is at the heart of empathy, right? And that act of listening meant we got more courage as educators, because they were saying, we can. Because I keep saying, in the first 2 years of our children's life on the planet, they're telling you, look at me, mama, I can run, talk, think, laugh, dance, all of this, and then we send them to school. We say, now you can't. Just the irony of it. In the first 2 years, you're telling them, हाँ बेटा, कौवा बोलो, ये बोलो, आओ बेटा, चलो बेटा. And then we just send them off. And we say, no, you can sit and think. Are you kidding me? You have to just listen to what I tell you. You can run and play. Sorry, sit for 15 years. And for 15 years, we take away choice from the vocabulary, and then we say, India's in a problem. So I think and I think that is what I have learned. That is what I continue to learn. And it's not just specific to India. I see this across the world now. So I think the who and the why is missing from our conversations of education. That's why I keep saying a lot of conferences in education, we'd never see children. I'm so glad you got Kajal here. But if we don't see children and we're not listening to children, we're a group of human beings talking about what should change, and there's no children in the space that we have to listen to. So I have a problem with the way we go about thinking about education without child.
And how do you go about that in actual practice? Because I think you can do it as a mother, people who are around you can get infected by that way of being, and you can translate that maybe to few people, but how does it become a systematic practice or a process that can then be used by many more people? I think that's...
Well, I'm glad you asked that. Design thinking, I'm talking about, again, when I went to NID, nobody sort of had an understanding of that. The design process is a framework, it's a process, it's not a product developed idea, right? And this might get a little bit verbose, but just bear with me. The idea of design thinking for the longest time was thought of being an idea in a design firm, or like, idea would do it, or an idea would do it, and we kind of kept it at a distance from the way we naturally engage with life. And children are natural followers of a process. They always start with empathy. If you see a child with another child, they'll always start with, hi, how are you? There's no resistance to the immediate connection, right? And that immediately means, if I have even a cap here, they'll make this into an airplane and there'll be one game that starts. Okay, so imagination is the next step from the first engagement. And then, of course, doing and sharing. So what we did at Riverside was we demystified the jargon of design thinking and made it so accessible. I keep saying, if it's not visible, if it's not accessible, I can't replicate it. So the language also becomes very accessible. So we made it into 4 simple steps: feel, imagine, do, and share. We call it FIDS for kids. In a slightly more philosophical manner, feel is empathy. Imagination is ethics, because you can't say, I will make something change if I don't take responsibility. Do is excellence, and shared is elevation. So in my head, those 4 E's is what education has to set out to do, making us from human to humane. And that choice of being humane is those 4 E's that we set out to do. Right? Those are the seeds we plant every single day. So it's not by chance, tukka maar ke one child makes it. It's by design can it shape the work we do. So the feel, imagine, do, share becomes the narrative of the way we work with children in our own professional development, in terms of never starting, I will tell you what to change, but always engaging with the user. Today, Design for Change, the same feel, imagine, do, share is being used by 2 million children in 60 countries. And telling us again and again, it starts with the child. And all you have to do is unleash it. And it's so easy to replicate.
Do you have anything to show around that?
Yeah, okay. I'd like to show you just one video from Riverside, just to give you a sense of what the fits. And because the iterative process we don't do in education enough. So what you'll see is a group of 6-year-olds learning all your math, science, and English, whatever. But what they did was they were given a challenge to look at designing of handmade jewelry to raise funds for their older buddies who work with children with cancer. So what you'll see is skill development, mathematical thinking, iteration, quality, going back, and then eventually the sharing of the story. So it's a quick idea of how it happens. Yeah, sound?
Archana ma'am is a jewelry designer and she has put up her jewelry exhibition. Then we thought that we could also make this kind of jewelry. Then we told Kiran ma'am about it. Kiran ma'am told us that
you can do an exhibition.
yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah. So we said yes, but Kiran ma'am asked us that no, you can't do it, you can't do it. But we said no, we can do it. So she told in 10 days I won 5 jewelry pieces. So we started looking at different materials and we created our jewelry. But when we did the exhibition, Kiran ma'am didn't like our jewelry pieces.
I want this necklace. Look at the size of these beads. Right? And look at your pattern. I can't wear it. It's too tight. So nobody came and asked Kiran, what kind of design you like, what colors you like.
So we did a survey and asked different teachers which color do you want, where you will use it. For putting up our second exhibition, we went to some stores and some exhibitions. In the second exhibition, we got lots of advance orders. But when the ma'am started using the jewelry pieces, the anklets broke. So then we were looking at quality.
I want you to check this hook and I want you to check that hook and tell me why Kiran is saying this is good quality and that is not. Here you are.
And we went to the shops, we were comparing and we understood what was quality. We went to NID, what kind of tools they use to design or what material they use.
Now what is the number?
122 rupees.
So whenever you write money, rupees has to be written. It is compulsory.
So we thought that we can help heal by selling our jewelry. Then we had made many designs, lots and lots of jewelry pieces for earrings, anklets, hairbands, necklaces. Then we put up a stall in an exhibition at Rajpath Club. We were happy that we could make money and then we could give it to the healed people. Customers were not believing that we have made this jewelry.
Awesome. And I think this is something that you were doing all your life, no? So it wasn't something only in school. This was this mindset.
Yeah, I think the idea of just, it starts with, I don't know, it just starts with belief. It starts with the genuine respect for another human being's potential, irrespective of demographics, gender, politics, geography, none of those. When you blur those boundaries and just start with that fundamental belief, it shifts. I think what happens is so many filters by which we look at our children. Gender is a huge filter. They can, they cannot. Demographics, the education of scarcity. They can only do this much, so nice. This patronizing attitude by which we look at our children means that our curriculum will be patronizing. Only this much is good enough. They cannot do more than that. What's the worst can happen, right? And I think by them showing us again and again that capability means, I keep saying, we are emboldened to do more and more. And that's really what the return of investment in a way is. And that finally means that when they go out, like Vibha ma'am was saying, that when they engage with life, they're not just navigating it, they're shaping it. And that's the finest promise. We don't need more people taking up space on the planet. We already have 7 billion of them, right? So the promise really is that wherever our children graduate, the belief that I can make the world, my world, not even forget the world, my world a little better is the fundamental belief system that you have to inculcate.
And that's to the same point that you were talking about, that you are the one you've been waiting for, in some sense, that our own biases, our own mindsets are really stopping us from actually doing what seems to be the natural thing to do.
And also another thing, you asked me about design thinking, right? Unlike, because I didn't come from education, I had no barriers. I had nothing to say, this is how it has to happen. I don't think in education we question the status quo. We take it for granted there have to be timetables, there have to be a school uniform, there have to be all these XYZ things. And then we say, let's be a little bit more creative. We don't even question the fundamental, why does there have to be say, timetable, if that's at all something you're wedded to, right? So to question the status quo means you remove all the things that currently exist and say, is it still serving the user? Does a child genuinely benefit from 30-minute timetables? If you feel that there is enough validation and that user's telling me, yes, it matters, by all means. But if the user has been look at India's report card, yeah? It's a resounding F. If in 60 years we've not been listening, we've just been getting a little bit more creative and saying, okay, now our textbooks have photographs and it's colorful. Now you must like it. Right, let's put iPad on in everything. Now why are you not learning? Because a child is telling you, like Vibha and Kajal have told us beautifully, the whole body has to be involved. But we have no time for that. Because it's messy. Yeah. And it's uncomfortable. And I have to look at you in the eye. Oh, that's too much time work. So let me just show my back to you for 15 years. You see each other's back for 15 years. Don't engage, don't talk, because it's such a difficult task to listen. And that's why we will not be doing, I would say, paradigm shifting ideas. We will be a little creative. We will make a little bit more thing, but India cannot continue to suffer that.
And I think the purpose of that, solving that India's problem that you mentioned, is also probably in the hands of children in some ways, which we've been seeing through some of the work you've been doing. So I think one question we had was, where is this idea of being a good human being and a good citizen of the country, and how does one really inculcate those values in being able to think beyond self as well, and make a difference to things around us?
The world over, I've had a huge opportunity and a blessing to travel, and I keep saying there's a huge crisis of compassion the world over. Our idea of the other and the intolerance to the other, no matter what, we are hugely creative saying gender, religion, color of skin, your non-veg, veg, we are creative in dismissing the other. Now we're so fearful, and that fear is coming down into our classrooms. I mean, the very fact that in a world we live in, a man is getting lynched and we will take out our mobile phones and take a video is fundamentally something wrong in who we are. If a 5-year-old can get raped and we don't care, and we will say the cow needs to be protected and our children don't, fundamentally those are flawed presumptions, right? Okay, forget you can't do something there, but we can definitely do something in the work we do. And that's the unique opportunity. The beauty of these 100-odd people living here means that you have direct access to a child. And that means you're able to architect a certain compassion. And so no longer is your content going to be, and it's pretty much sure, content no longer is going to be the game changer. If I know a little bit more quadratic equation, doesn't give me an edge, right? Content can be got from a website, from a Khan Academy, all of that, right? So you don't need content necessarily now to run a school. So what we need is the ability to figure out what choices we make on a daily basis. I keep saying you can choose to be kinder. You can choose to be more empathetic. But these choices are not by chance. They have to be inculcated by design. Because if in a school time, from 8 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon, they have no choice and no time to talk about each other, it's not going to happen. We're creatures of habit. What we do every day is going to matter. Imagine 5 sessions of math we will timetable every day of the week. Not even a single on empathy. Not a single space for empathy or conversation. But 5 timetables of math and geography and EVS. So how do we shift our choices? What's our promise? I keep saying, when I put my son in my arm, there was a promise. When a child comes into the space, there's a promise that you're just born human by chance, but you can become human by choice. And those choices is what education should eventually shift direction into.
And is there an example of that
Yeah.
you can?
I'll show you an example from Design for Change. Now we've got it. I'll show you an example of children in a little village school in Rajasthan. Again, exercising the feel, imagine, do, share, where they realized that their grandparents were being neglected and not respected as much because they were now older and they were at home or in the farms. And so these children decided to change that story. Video 3, please. Look at what any child can do. And this is a remarkable story of change. Again, all of this debunks the fact that you need resources to run a school. Okay, this is just about you. I keep saying you are a living curriculum. Unlike teaching chemistry, you need like a qualification and you need training. To be kind, to smile, to give a hug, it's just you. So people say, how do you start? It starts with you. It starts with just a smile. I keep saying, teachers, my God, they've stopped smiling. You go to a school, to look efficient means I have to be stern. So one thing that I will request, and I don't know how it is in your schools, but even by virtue of physical design, I've realized that that makes a big difference. So just removing as many barriers between you and your child, you and the space, is a marvelous design decision to make. So we don't have at Riverside a principal's cabin or a staff room, none of these. We just removed all of those barriers, and we're saying that the entire school is a learning establishment, the entire school is a teaching establishment. So I would recommend strongly, if you have a principal's cabin or whatever, just close those doors. It really doesn't matter what your title on that door is. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. But if you can keep your table or chair outside in the corridors for a day and just experience what it means for the conversation that will happen on your way and who you'll observe, multiple things will change. So I think by even in terms of physical design, you can make shifts that way.
I think and building on that, I think it takes a certain kind of leadership or a certain kind of thinking to be able to imagine that kind of a possibility. Or what does it take from a leader's perspective, or to be able to do this?
Yeah, these are not my principles, but I'm hugely. I keep saying I have like a 3G network that guides me. Now 4G. Gandhi, Howard Gardner, Govinda, and Geet. For me, these are important. I think being guided by some direction is often useful, and so for me, Gandhi is a huge proponent of that. So I have his cutouts all over the school. In a way, I feel that I have to look at him in the eye and tell him, when I do meet him, did I do all right? So I think moral leadership, moral authority is massive. You cannot lead from the position. I keep asking, if you remove the position or the title, will people still want to listen to you? If they're not, then you have to live up to that idea. So for me, talent is, I think, a little overrated. Stamina is a much greater leadership requirement. I feel that right now we don't have a stamina even for relationships. We don't have a stamina for an idea. We change every 2 years, we change every 6 months. So we don't have a stamina. So what happens is schools get fatigued then from change. The principal comes back after a fantastic session, he makes a change, says, come on now, everybody should now do project-based learning. And the principal or whoever the leader is unable to kind of action it or show it. Right, and you have these large-scale changes. The teachers get fatigued by the fact that we don't know what to do. Then another 6 months, they go to another conference, let us now all do iPad training or whatever. And then there's a fatigue, right? And then there is no real respect for the need to change, because you need stamina to stay with an idea. So I've learned that. I've learned that more than anything, you need stamina. The other thing that I've really learned is a sense of humor. You cannot be in education not believing and being ridiculously idealistic. You just have to. The space is bleak. You're going to encounter stories, but if you're not ridiculously optimistic, not even idealistic, but optimistic, that optimism is the greatest gift you can give another mind, then you should not be in this business. Make papad on the side. But even papad needs great skills. But I'm just saying that the idea of optimism, stamina, and a sense of humor.
What about the other 3 Gs?
Govinda?
Yeah.
Oh my God, how can you not like Govinda? Yeah, for me to dance, and when I remember encountering Govinda when he was at his heydays, I was blown by the honesty of his work. You know, he said, I couldn't care shit what you thought about my dress sense. Yeah. This is me. And that smile. And you couldn't help getting infected by that. I think that's what we are. Contagion is a damn good idea, yeah. You walk into a class defeated, depressed, angry, it is going to transfer to the other human being. So if you have a cold, somebody's going to get a cold. No, it's such logic. Right? So if as teachers or whatever we claim to be, just in front of another human being, just the act of smiling and noticing and saying, hi, I've noticed you have a name. It's marvelous, because I still remember when I went to ask my son's teacher, tell me about Rag. She looked at me and said, what is his roll number? My son didn't even have a name yet. There were no stories. So I keep saying the greatest gift you can give another human being is the idea of giving somebody a name, telling a story, being a storyteller. So I think, yeah, and Geet?
Yeah.
Yes, I think the pursuit of excellence I've learned from him more than anything else. And he taught me one remarkable lesson. He said to pursue excellence, you must find beauty in monotony. He said the idea of being always novel or being entertained or entertaining is not about excellence. The fact that you land up every single day believing in that pursuit, he says that gives you stamina. So yes, 4 Gs.
Awesome.
We'll end with one last video.
Yes.
I like to just end by showing you one of my Gs. Yeah, Howard Gardner 4, and I think it'll give you a nice little boost to end.
Unfortunately, most ministers of education today are so consumed with science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and having higher test scores that they forget that at the end of the day, if we don't have people of good character, people who do the right thing, intellect in itself will destroy the world. It will not save it. So here's to Design for Change.
This is the only initiative that I have heard of in the world where once the initiative is announced, the power is transferred totally to the children.
I love about this conference is the fact that it's completely student-led. Children leading the world, and you see that happen at this conference.
Just look at them. You think these are just children? Think again. Because these children have great power. They have the power to reduce the weight of their school bags, the power to care for the elderly, the power to stop child marriages, the power to build dams. And how are they doing this? They're doing this with the two most powerful words in their vocabulary. I can. At Design for Change, we don't see them as children. We see superheroes, a new generation of superheroes. And these superheroes are telling us that they are not the future, they are the now. So what are you waiting for?